Hello and welcome, I'm your CodeMonkey. In this lecture we're going to add a nice visual to our plate. Okay, so right now we can already pick up ingredients onto the plate, so if I pick up the plate and I pick up some cheese, there you go, there's some cheese on the plate, but we cannot see it, so let's solve that. And the way we're going to do that is actually in a very simple way. If you look in the included assets inside the prefab visuals, there's this nice plate complete visual that I built. Basically, it's a full burger that contains all of the ingredients. What we're going to do is actually very simple. We're just going to enable or disable these game objects. That's it. So let's do exactly that. Let's make a new C# script. Call it the plate complete visual. Let's attach the script over here. And let's also make sure to put this one inside the plate. So let's save this prefab. Let's go inside the plate prefab. So inside the prefabs, here the kitchen objects, we've got the plate. So inside the plate, let's drag that. Let's drag the plate complete visual. Okay, great. So now let's open up this script. Over here, let's first add a reference to our plate kitchen object. So a serialized field, private for the plate kitchen object for the plate kitchen object. Back in the editor, let's drag the reference. Okay, great. So now here, basically, we need to update this visual whenever the plate gets any ingredient added to it. So let's go over here into the plate script and basically just need to fire off an event when that happens. So let's make a public event handler. And let's call it on ingredient added. Okay, and for this one, let's also make an event args to contain the data of what object we added. So let's make a public class on ingredient added event args. Let's extend event args. And inside, let's make just a kitchen object SO, kitchen object SO. Okay, great. And let's make the event of this type. Alright, so now let's just fire off this event. So down here, when we try to add an ingredient, if we do add the ingredient, let's fire off this event. So let's invoke with this, and let's create a brand new one, passing the kitchen object SO as this kitchen object SO. Okay, so we have our event correctly being sent. Now over here on the plate complete visual, let's listen to it. Again, as always, let's make sure to do it only on start. So the plate kitchen object on ingredient added, let's listen to this event. And over here, we just need to either enable or disable the visuals that relate to the kitchen object inside over here, the event args. However, of course, the question is, how exactly do we find them? The plate complete visual has all of these game objects. How do we know which one belongs to that kitchen object? Now, technically, one way would be to do a simple transform find and find the child objects by name. Technically, that would work. But like I mentioned in the beginning of the course, strings are a horrible way to identify things. They are very error prone. So let's not do that. Instead, let's use a proper approach where we can define some kind of link between a kitchen object SO and a game object. And we can do that very easily by just defining a struct. So up here in our script, let's do exactly that. Let's define a public, make it a struct, and name it kitchen object SO underscore game object. And then inside, it's very simple. We just have a kitchen object SO field, and then also a game object field. That's it, super simple. By the way, if you don't know what is a struct, basically it's very similar to a class, except it's stored in different places in memory and behaves somewhat differently. I have a very important video on that subject, what is the difference between value types and reference types. Classes are reference types, so when you pass in a class into a parameter, you are passing in a reference to that object. Whereas structs are value types, so when you pass in a struct onto a parameter, you are passing in a copy. It's a bit of a tricky thing, so definitely make sure you go watch that video for more detail so you don't get confused in the future. Here I defined it as a struct simply as kind of a teaching moment, but also because it just makes sense that if I just want to store some data without any logic, then it should probably be a struct and not a class. Although in this case a class would work just as well. Anyway, so here we have a struct. Inside the struct, we have a field of type kitchen object SO and another one of type game object. So now let's just make a list of this type that we can expose in the editor. So up here, a serialized field, private, let's make it a list of kitchen object SO game object and call it kitchen object SO game object list. Okay, that's it, super simple. So let's save and make sure this compiles. So actually, let's just comment this out, just make sure our code compiles, okay? And over here in the editor, we see the tricky thing when it comes to using fields of custom types. If we look in the inspector, nope, we don't see anything, so we cannot see our custom type in the inspector. If you make a custom type like this struct, and you want to show it in the inspector, then you need to add the attribute serializable, which exists inside system. So let's go up here using system. And let's add the attribute serializable, just like this. Okay, so do this, save, and let's look. And yep, there we go. Now we do see our custom struct. So we've got a list, and we can click on the plus icon, and there you go, we've got an element, and it does have a field for a kitchen object SO and one for a game object. So that's great. With this now we have a really nice place where we can link one object to another. So let's just do exactly that. So for example, let's put the bread over there, and let's assign the kitchen object SO for the one with bread. Let's do the same thing for all of the others. So let's add a whole bunch more. Okay, so we've got the bread, then we're going to have the meat patty cooked, then the tomato slices, then we have the cheese slices, the cabbage sliced, and finally the meat patty burned. So we've got numbers 0 through 5, so we have 6 elements, and over here, yep, we do got 6, so we have all of them. We can get rid of these last 2, okay, great. And now let's assign the proper objects, so this one for the meat patty cooked, then we've got the tomato slices, then we have the cheese slices, then the cabbage slices, and finally the meat patty burned. Okay, great, so all of the references match. Now back in the code here, so we have this list fully filled out. And when we have this, really very simple, we just cycle through the list to find the right game object. So let's do a for each of type kitchen object SO game object in our kitchen object SO game object list. And we check if this kitchen object SO dot kitchen object matches the one that we received in the event. If they do match, then go into this one, grab the game object, and set active into true. Okay, so that's it, some very simple logic. And also we can start with them disabled by default in the editor, or just over here, just do something very simple. Just do a for each, cycle through every single one of them, and set every single one of them to false, so that they are hidden. Okay, so with this, all the ingredients on the plate should be visible. So here in the editor, let's just make sure all the references have been set. Let's go back, save the prefab, and let's set on play. Okay, so here we are, and by default, look at that, an empty plate, and yep, it is empty. And now let's slice some cheese. Now let's place some cheese on there, and yep, there you go, we've got some cheese. Now let's pick up some bread, drop some bread, and there you go, got some cheese and some bread. Then let's cook some meat. So let's cook it, and let's pick it up with a plate. And as soon as I go, boom, there you go, I've got a nice cheeseburger. All right, awesome. So with this, I can now do a complete burger, so let's finish it. Let's just add some more tomatoes, so slice them and add the tomatoes. And finally, some sliced cabbages, slice them, put them there, and there you go, here we have a fully complete burger. Okay, so that's great, all of our visual logic is indeed working. However, this visual is a bit hard to see, it's not very clear to the player. So just looking at it from this distance, does that have a tomato or not? There's a tiny sliver of red in there, but you can't really see it. So we should probably add some nice clear icons on top to clearly indicate what exactly is on this plate. So that's exactly what we're going to do in the next lecture.